Sony just speedrun the most PlayStation move in history, and honestly, if you didn't see the explosion coming, you weren't looking at the fuse. February 2026 just dropped the punchline to a 5-year joke nobody asked for. Sony confirmed Bluepoint is closing its doors in March. 70 people are out of a job because of a business review, which is corporate speak for, "We set your house on fire, and now we're blaming the wind." Bluepoint Games were the surgeons of the industry. I promise I'm not an AI. If I were an AI, I'd probably have a much cooler voice and a significantly shorter list of awkward pauses. They took legendary dusty code, like Shadow of the Colossus and Demon's Souls, and turned them into forbidden future hardware. Sony bought them in 2021, like they finally understood that fans like things that are actually good. Then the assignment changed. Now, the blunt take. Sony bought a precision scalpel, used it to flip burgers in a forest fire, and then got mad when the blade got dull. It's like hiring a world-class watchmaker, throwing him into a monster truck pit, and then firing him because he didn't win the demolition derby. You've seen this movie before, just with a different logo on the suit. A studio gets acquired, the press release uses words like synergy and vibrant future, and then the executives start preheating the excuses, like a frozen lasagna. Then the project hits a wall, the numbers don't look like a slot machine, and suddenly, the talented partners are just overhead. Neat trick, right? Let's talk about the timeline, because the math here is a public funeral with a coupon code. Post-acquisition, Bluepoint didn't get to do what they do best. They were co-developing God of War Ragnarok, and wasting years on a live service God of War project that Sony killed in January 2025. Sony literally parked a Ferrari in a school zone and complained about the speed limit. Then, a year after cancelling the game they forced the studio to make, they just deleted the studio. That's not a challenging environment. That's a corporate version of putting the family dog in a cannon and firing it into the sun. Herman Hulst's official note is a masterpiece of industrial-strength gaslighting. He talked about rising costs and changing player behavior, which is impressive, because it says everything, except we pointed the wrong team at the wrong target for half a decade. When fans read those lines, they don't hear strategy. They hear corporate perfume sprayed on a tire fire. And yes, the internet is currently a crime scene. Reddit is lit up, the comment sections are screaming, and the vibe is unanimous. Why buy the Remake Kings just to bury them? Numbers don't care about vibes, but fans do, and right now the vibes are toxic waste. The market is hard, defense is the ultimate moral hall pass. Sure, the market is tough. But Bluepoint wasn't a giant money furnace, they were a compact, elite squad. If a team that delivers prestige hits can't survive inside the PlayStation family, then the family house is haunted. This is where the Bloodborne jokes start to hurt. Fans have been screaming for a Bloodborne remake since the PS5 was a rumor. Sony had the one studio on Earth that everyone trusted with the keys to that kingdom. The audience wanted steak. Sony handed the grill master a live service spreadsheet and acted confused when dinner never arrived. At some point, missed opportunity, and stops being a critique and starts being a diagnosis. The funniest part, in the darkest way, is how predictable this was. Bluepoint's identity was craftsmanship and technical discipline. You don't hire a guy who restores Renaissance paintings and tell him to go paint live service battle pass murals on a highway. That's not innovation, that's a management panic attack. The PS5 era is becoming a museum of avoidable mistakes. Concord flamed out so hard it became a cautionary tale before the servers even cooled. Firewalk gone. Neon Koi gone. The live service pivot is leaving fresh craters where legendary studios used to be. Every week the branding says best place to play, but every month the headlines say best place to watch management panic. Losing Bluepoint hits harder because they weren't a gamble. They were the signal in the noise. They were proof that Sony still cared about the legacy that built the brand. Closing them mid-generation is Sony throwing away their cleanest strength, because a trend report said extraction shooters might print money. And please, spare me the changing player behavior shield. Players didn't change. The industry just stuffed them with half-finished copycats and asked for eternal engagement like it was a second mortgage. Players didn't reject Bluepoint's lane. Sony closed the lane and put a live service-only sign on the gate. That distinction matters. The gaslight isn't even subtle anymore. It's industrial strength OSH certified with a warranty. The message to every other studio is now brutal: deliver prestige, sell consoles, build trust, and you'll still get reassigned to trend duty. Miss the trend, and suddenly you're a business review casualty. That doesn't inspire talent, it trains them to keep their resumes updated. Sony can talk about portfolio optimization until they're blue in the face, but the couch-level truth is simpler. You had the Remake Kings. You had the hardware that needed their polish. You had the fan demand. You chose the treadmill, you lost the project, and now you've lost the studio. That's not bad luck. That's the marketing equivalent of knocking over your own tip jar. The you vs them part writes itself here. You, the player, wanted the games they were famous for. Them, the executive blob, wanted the recurring revenue they weren't built for. When the sermon didn't chart, they didn't reconsider the script, they just fired the choir. This is why the wallet vote feels like a survival tactic now. If a company can acquire a beloved specialist in 2021 and delete them by 2026, after doing nothing with them, why should we trust the next acquisition? It makes every "we're committed to creators" quote sound like it was generated by a corporate apology machine. It makes the whole brand feel like it's running on anxiety instead of hype. And anxiety is a momentum killer. It makes every showcase feel thinner. It makes every announcement feel like a countdown to a shutdown. Losing Bluepoint is a luxury self-sabotage. It's the corporate version of dropping a diamond because you were trying to grab a handful of nickels. Studios want the culture of fear to end. Stop treating creators like entries on a spreadsheet. Executives want respect. Treat the audience like they have a memory longer than a goldfish. If you want to run a creative business, you have to let people create the things that made you buy them in the first place. Don't hire a chef and get mad he isn't a robot. Don't buy a legacy and act surprised when it doesn't fit into a loot box. At the end of the day, we aren't asking for a utopia. We're asking for a decent game from the people who know how to make them, without a side order of macroeconomic headwinds as an excuse for bad leadership. Bluepoint didn't fail at being Bluepoint. Sony failed at using the best tool in their kit. That's the whole relationship. No therapy session, no manifesto, just a waste of talent and a broken promise. Simple. Everyone goes home, except for the 70 people who actually knew how to make the games we wanted. Let's double back to the why, because this is the part that drives me insane. When a game wins, the press says the vision was bold. When a studio gets closed, the press says the industry is evolving. Brother, evolution doesn't usually involve cutting off your own hands, so you can run faster. Bluepoint was the hands. They were the technical wizardry that made the PS5 feel like a generational leap on day one. Without them, you're just left with a box and a bunch of coming soon trailers for games that might get cancelled in the next business review. It's industrial strength irony. Sony is selling us the future of play while deleting the people who perfected the history of play. You pay $500 for a console, you pay $70 for the games, and then you're told your frustration is entitlement because you wanted the studio you like to stay open. Sure, man, and only villains want their favorite restaurant to not be replaced by a parking lot. The modern audience thing pops up here too. The mythical crowd that wants every game to be an endless, social hub extraction shooter nightmare. Developers chase it like Bigfoot, only to find a couple of retweets and a massive deficit. Meanwhile, the actual paying customers are staring at their copies of Bloodborne, wondering why the one team capable of fixing it is being sent to the Shadow Realm. It's like being forced to watch a magician who keeps dropping the cards, then being told you hate magic when you stop clapping. We don't hate magic. We hate seeing the magician get fired and replaced by a guy reading a PowerPoint about magic. And notice how the them always wins in the language. Resource allocation, strategic alignment, challenging environment. These aren't reasons, they are shields. They use these words so they don't have to say, "We forced a square peg into a round hole for 5 years," and then blame the peg for being square. It's the corporate version of kicking over your own tip jar and then wondering why the service is bad. If you're a developer at Naughty Dog or Santa Monica right now, how do you sleep? You realize that your value is only as good as the latest trend report. You could be the best in the world at what you do, but if the blob decides you need to be making a mobile kart racer next week, that's your life. And if it fails, macroeconomics. Neat trick, right? This is why the wallet vote is the only thing left. Not because we're leading a crusade, but because we're tired of being bankrolled experiments for executive ego. If a company doesn't respect the talent it buys, why should we respect the brand they're selling? It's not activism, it's basic survival. Your hobby time is limited, your money is hard-earned, and your patience for business reviews that delete excellence is officially zero. Sony can recover, sure, but they won't do it with memos. They will do it by admitting they broke the kitchen on purpose. Until then, every state of play is just another chance to see which studio logo is getting fired into the sun next. Because at the end of the day, you're not asking for a utopia. You're asking for the Remake Kings to be allowed to make remakes. You're asking for the surgeons to be allowed to perform surgery. And if that's toxic, then toxicity is just the new word for having standards. Go make your portfolio. We'll make our choice. That's the entire deal. No therapy, no manifesto, just play or pass. And right now the pass is looking a lot more tempting than the play.